It's been over 20 years since the Oddworld series made its debut, and now Abe is back in an all-new entry, Oddworld Soulstorm. I'm joined now by series creator Lorne Lannin, the third Oddworld game, Oddworld Soulstorm. You are, of course, the creative force behind all this. Let's talk, my friend. It's by the way, it's weird that it's just us. We've been doing this all week with a whole panel of people, like two of us and two of you guys. But yeah, now it just feels like you're on a talk show. Yeah, it's. It's been over 20 years since the Oddworld series made its debut, and now Abe is back in an all-new entry, Oddworld Soulstorm. I'm joined now by series creator Lorne Lannin. Welcome, Lorne.
Well, thanks for having me on, Ryan.
That's awesome. I get you all to myself. Normally we fill out the whole thing. It's like a bunch of IGN people, like a whole panel of developers. But now it's like welcome to late night with Ryan McCaffrey here
Beautiful,
on IGN.
I love it. And I showered today, so I know it's not me.
Much appreciated. No, it's I've had a chance to see Oddworld, Soulstorm specifically, a couple of times. But kind of before we kind of get into it, although we're going to look at some B-roll here. For those of you have a long history with Xbox and just with this franchise. For people that this is going to be their first Oddworld game. You're jumping into the middle of a 5-game arc that you're in. Yep. What is the? Give me the quick background. Catch us up for those of us who are jumping in the first time here.
Well, when we started the company with myself and my partner Sherry McKenna back in '94, I told her this story about a slave that would come from the worst position you'd ever want to be in, who would rise to change the world.
Yeah.
She was like, great, let's make 5 movies. I said, it's a 5-part series. And I was like, no, we're going to make 5 games. And that was the beginning. But I sold her on this story because she was a sucker for stories. And then what happened is the first game we persevered through, learned how to build games. And the story was relatively left intact to what we cared about as a narrative play experience. And then, times, opportunities, business, new consoles, we slightly got askew and off course as we were building our titles. We didn't have as much time to do what we wanted, things like that. And over the years, that sort of took us off course from that 5-part story of exactly where we wanted to go. So when we started self-publishing back in around 2008, and we always held on to the rights of the IP, it was always our dream, we were able to start selling these old games that started coming back to life on Steam first and on other networks.
An interesting part of your story that you told me before is I think it's fascinating that you sort of voluntarily shut the studio down for a while.
Yeah.
Well, you kind of walked away from everything for a bit.
Well, it was kind of a choice. The mid-tier developers in the 90s were in the early 2000s were kind of just getting squeezed by circumstances, and it was kind of a sell, be acquired, or go out of business. And you kind of had that choice. And we knew if we sold, it wasn't quite the destiny we would hope for. So we decided to pack it up. And instead of being acquired and doing big things with a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, we decided to wait and see if self-publishing and digital distribution would actually be a way that we could revitalize ourselves.
Yeah.
And in 2008 with Steam, that became possible. And then later, Sony was allowing it. And then eventually, Microsoft and Nintendo were allowing it. And so through that, we were able to use our library, generate the funds, and start actually producing games again. And first, it was just cheap conversions because that's all the money we had, from what was an Xbox game to a PS3 game. And we started doing that, and that led us to be able to do some HD remakes. And then it led us to actually, move up the price times of multi-million-dollar productions, which became new and tasty. And now we're getting to learn who our audience was, right? Because in '97, you had no idea, and Walmart didn't tell you.
You hope it's everybody.
You hope it's everybody. No one's filling out the form in retail. But we actually got to hear the audience opinion, and they wanted more of the Abe games in a classic sense. And so that led to us redoing Abe's Odyssey as new and tasty, which was really close to that idea of that first part of the epic.
Right.
And then they said, do the next one, because we asked them, if we succeed at this and you don't want to kill us, what do you want us to do next? And they were, redo Exodus. And we're like, well, if we're going to go there, then why don't we just do it right? And we had enough success with new and tasty that we were able to finally do a entirely new game and revisit the sort of lost heritage of what we wanted to achieve and plug it into this one and go for it.
I mean, the artistic integrity and or just balls that it must have taken
or craziness.
to not, answer those publisher calls and not just lock in your future by being acquired. Do you ever look back and go, how the hell did that work out for me?
Well, there was a lot of years where you're not sure how it's going to work out, and the fact is I still live that way. I'm like, is it going to work out? Am I making the right decisions? Did I make a really dumb call here? And so you hope for the best, right? But you really, you have to believe in what you're doing enough to hold on to the dream. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend that for everyone because sometimes it might just be a bad dream.
Right.
But in our case, we believed in the IP and we had success. We had our ups and downs in the industry, and then we looked at what really caused that. Was it the IP or was it circumstances? And we thought the IP still had a lot of life left in it, that if we got acquired by a publisher, probably wouldn't see it the same way.
Right.
And so we chose to hang on to it and take that longer bet, and it cost us a lot. I mean, we walked away from the table from a lot of financing, from selling the company, from things like that. And it was devastating to shut down. A great crew. And we tried some other things. Some we succeeded at, some we failed. But with self-publishing, we were able to come back and really start organically building a business like the old-fashioned way.
Yeah.
You make a profit and you reinvest.
Right. You go back
don't
in.
go get funding. And it worked. Like to our luck and to the wonderfulness of our fan base.
That story is just amazing to me. That you
it's
bet
amazing
on yourself.
to me.
Yeah, you bet on yourself. You held on to the company and the IP, and now here we are with Soulstorm. So we're looking at some footage of it. So this is sort of classic 2.5D. You call it. You have a different term.
Well, so
for
we
it,
say
though.
so the 2.5D was something we started playing with, but as you notice the depth of the world, we're actually moving in more of what we call a 2.9D way. So the hardcore playing stages are largely in a 2.5D format, but getting between there and moving around the world is actually curved paths and winding and going into dimensions. So what you see in the backgrounds here, in the distant background, you'll still see workers walking around way back there.
Right,
Tiny.
you can go there.
And you can go there, and if you see it, like you see trains passing way off in the distance, right? You're going to have to cross those train tracks.
Yeah, when I was playing the game, I got plastered by that train.
Sorry about that, but it was funny, right?
It was funny.
Bad karma, but it was funny. And so we really wanted to push the dimension on top of the classic. And we were trying to study the audience. We're going, why do they still really want this 2.5D sort of platformer classic impression? And then there was reasons for that. Some of them are, we want a more directed experience. We don't want to just be aiming our camera.
Right.
We made, Strangers Wrath, other games. There were POV, over the shoulder. And so we were like, this is very interesting because the reasons they wanted it was a lot of the reasons why I chose the platformer genre to begin with, because I felt like I was the guardian angel over a character in a desperate situation rather than trying to project as being the character,
right.
which is what I am in a POV game, typically. And that's what the audience was responding to. So we said, well, if we're going to play with that format, how do we stay true to what gave it its integrity, but how do we evolve it in ways? And as I would say, this is not a revolutionary game, it's an evolutionary game about revolution.
Yeah.
And
we're seeing here you've added a whole crafting system to the game.
Well, so yeah. So the way we did that is you're on a scavenger's economy because you're on the run, right? You're on the run with all the guys you rescued from the last game.
Right, you're not going to work and taking home a paycheck.
No, you've got no legitimate income, right? So you're like going through garbage cans. You're trying to find collectible, recyclable bottles, bottle caps, things like this, going into empty lockers, doing some bad deeds. Pickpocketing security guards, things of this nature. But what you could do is then you can turn those in on vending machines that will allow recycling. And from there, through a real economy, you can use that money to start buying consumer products through vending machines.
Yeah.
And this is where you get into sort of the anarchist cookbook
Yes.
element of things, where you start buying from the man to combine with crafting other things you found in the environment to start using weapons against the man. So there's a bit of an anarchist flair that's happening in here.
Yeah, we got the rubber bands going over.
Yeah, the rubber bands on top. It's like
you can bounce it around corners.
What kind of havoc could you produce with office products? things from Staples, and we wanted to take that to the umpteenth level and still, keep it very lighthearted, right? And as you're watching, you'll notice these golden lights affecting the character. That's your karma. So every deed is reflected, and this has always been in our games. There's these sort of, we call it karma, and how you play dictates the ultimate sort of destiny of Abe in that episode. And in this case, we were always like, we've always talked about it and it leads to different endings, but why are we not seeing that at a moment-to-moment basis? What's creating my good karma? What's creating my bad karma? How is it going with me? How is it affecting my followers? And so what we started to do is really visualize that in a game way where you can start understanding that as it's happening. And it adds a layer of post-effect on top of an event. So we have the event, we go, oh, we got hit by the train. Look at what happened, they got hit by the train. So you're going, oh, look at all that black karma going into Abe's heart. That
lost
hurt.
a bunch of followers.
Lost a bunch of followers. So it's kind of a way to expand on the tragedy that you encounter along the way. In these games, the Abe games are always built on the idea that we have very sort of endearing, vulnerable characters that are in really hostile, brutal environments, and you're trying to succeed them through without getting them whacked, crushed, ground up by meat grinders, caught on fire, whatever it may be.
And I think you're talking about characters. Something else that's really jumped out at me about Soulstorm. You're building this on Unity. You're an independent team. You don't have $100 million first-party publisher budget behind you. But at the same, despite all that, the quality of the presentation on screen is tremendous. I don't know if we have the B-roll queued up of the cutscene with the train, because I've seen that, but you guys have come from a film background, and it's really evident from not even just looking at the game, but especially seeing the cutscenes too. And if you kind of talk about that sort of aspect of the presentation.
Well, we always saw that the future is kind of a real-time data set that goes across multiple mediums, right? In our previous games, we would use Maya to render out the movies and then other databases for the real-time.
Yeah.
The amazing thing now is that the databases that we're using in the game are the databases that we use for the cinematics, and we're at 8K resolution texture maps. We're at HDRP lighting. I mean, there's a number of things that are happening there that are actually like, wow, this is actually doing all dynamic lighting. When you see the police lights going off, when you see fire burning, when we did the liquid fire, that's a whole nother level of volatility that's going off.
Yeah, I did not fare well when I was playing
careful
the game.
About that. But the technology's come so far, and with Unity, we saw something where we saw an opportunity to shine, and we saw an opportunity to really, I think, make them look good. Right? And make us look good. And if we could make them look good and us look good in a unique way, then we'd get more visibility. And when you talk about how little a budget we have, how small a team it is, that visibility is critical. Because that's what's going to get us the exposure, because we don't have a big publisher behind it, but we really are striving for that AAA effect in terms of the quality, the lighting. I was trained as a painter. I was a visual effects supervisor in the film industry for effects, and so having the ability to do these things in real time is just, that's why I got into the game industry in '94, because I was like, this is amazing what these people are doing with 56K of memory. And like Dave Perry would be like, here's how we do what we do. And I'd be like, that's mind-blowing. And the film industry was like, well, those graphics are crappy. And I was like, you don't get it, where this is going to go, and the miracle that these people are doing, this is going to be an amazing medium, and it's an amazing medium for storytelling. And that's really the way I embraced it initially, and that's how I seduced Sherry McKenna into leaving a really successful film career into running a game company.
Well, we'll be keeping a very close eye on Oddworld Soulstorm, because it is looking absolutely fantastic. We just saw it there. So with that, IGN will be right back with plenty more E3 live coverage. But first, hey, James Manji, welcome to the Duggle. What's up next?
Daily Fix, IGN's daily news show. Take it away, Sydney.